Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today we are creating some arch-shaped scene cards using brand new products from the Mama Elephant April 2024 release. The focal point, or the starting off jumping point for both of these cards today, is this awesome Seaside Creative Cuts die. I've die cut the Seaside Vibes Creative Cuts die 2 times from some 110-pound weight smooth white cardstock. I actually didn't die cut the inside pieces out, which includes the Have a Beautiful Day sentiment, clouds, and sun or moon. The reason being is I don't really need that inside piece for these cards today, and if I don't have to lose those little pieces, then I'm going to keep them attached for now. I am using some Post-it tape to mask off the edges and bottom of my card, and then applying shaded lilac and blueprint sketch Distress Oxide inks to the waves down below. Now you may not think of shaded lilac for your waves, but once you build up that color with the blueprint sketch, I love that little bit of lavender that it adds to the top part of our waves in our little seaside scene. I do want to mask off a portion of the waves where that bottom wave kind of meets the top one, if you will, so that it's dark along the bottom edge of both. So I am manipulating some more Post-it tape. You can use washi, Post-its, or any kind of scrap paper that you might have to kind of mask that off. And I will reuse all of this Post-it tape for my second card design. If I was making more than just these 2 cards, I would utilize it until it wasn't sticky anymore. I am using the stamp wheel to help hold everything down nice and tight, or nice and secure, pardon me, not tight, while I am doing my inking. Then I am using something sharp. In this case, I am using this the poke tool from Simon Says Stamp to kind of pop out all of those little pieces in our waves. And that does take a minute. It does die cut all of them really well, the die does. However, you know, anytime you have a detailed die or smallish spaces, sometimes they like to stick inside. So this is such a useful tool to have on hand, something with a nice sharp point. I literally use this tool and my embellishment wand every time I craft. And you could probably throw my tweezers in there as well. They are just so useful, and it's kind of like the Misty. We don't know how we lived without these supplies or these tools before. Once I have both of my backgrounds inked up, I am going to leave the frame white. I am going to go ahead and place both of these in my spatter box, where I like to kind of control where all of that goes on my background. And I've got some white gouache, and I've got a little water in here as well. And I want to water it down enough that it easily creates these great little spatters, big, small, and I'm going to kind of try to focus them right there at the top of the waves, but you know as well as I do, you can't really control this all that much. And I am going to be pretty generous, because not only do I want some of those larger spots, but I want some really minuscule spatter as well, where it's just, you know, all of those teeny tiny little spots all over. Now I noticed I forgot to pop out all of the little wave pieces on that second panel that I inked, so I will need to let this completely dry and then I can pop them all out. The great thing is this doesn't take hardly any time at all to dry, but I do have all the stamping and coloring to do, which is going to give me plenty of time while everything is drying to, you know, or it's going to give the backgrounds plenty of time to dry, is what I should say. Now I have 2 white card bases. These are top fold card bases from Simon Says Stamp, and I wanted to create a shaped card. Now, because the Seaside Vibes cuts out that center piece, it wasn't going to work to use to make my card base. So I went to my stash and I found these domed arches from Simon Says Stamp. I don't want to cut it clear to the bottom because it's going to shorten the card panel, and the Seaside Vibes is technically an A2 sized base. So I've only run my background through my die cut machine at the top, and then I rolled it back. I didn't roll it all the way through, if that makes sense. The domed arch slightly hung over the top of the panel, creating the shaped card base. It's not an exact fit, but it's close enough that hardly any of our Seaside Vibes hangs over, and it's not going to leave any gaps when we place our frame on top of this card base, which is phenomenal. Now, some of my Post-it tape stuck, so I am using, again, that nice little sharp tool to peel that off. There might be a little adhesive on the base. Normally, that wouldn't bother me, but I am actually going to use the base and not another piece of paper because I don't really need to, and I felt like that would be kind of wasteful. So I am using a sand eraser to kind of remove that adhesive, and then taking the card base and directly inking my sky on the card base itself. Now I am using more Distress Oxide inks. We're going to use Salvaged Patina and Peacock Feathers for this. And we're going to start with Salvaged Patina, and I don't need to go all the way down to the bottom. So I was holding my frame in place to gauge, and even at this point, the gouache is dry. So I was able to use them, and I haven't even stamped my images from Me and My Whale or the Summer Floaties. Is that what it's called? Sometimes, you guys, all of the names of the stamp sets get so hard to remember. Yes, Summer Floaties is correct. So I am just taking my ink. I am using the stamp wheel. There will be a little bit that gets on my stamp wheel base, but I can easily wipe that up with either alcohol ink wipes or a cloth or baby wipes or whatever. So you see that with the Seaside Vibes Creative Cuts die, you get clouds, the greeting, and all of that good stuff. I am going to use the clouds and the greeting, not the sun/moon today. I just didn't really have room for it. But I'm looking at those clouds and thinking, what else does my background need? I felt like it needed something. I knew that this background for both of my cards was going to not only be part of the scene, but it also needs to be a spot for our greeting. And I love to integrate my greetings right into a scene card. Scene cards are something that I have loved for a really long time. And I feel like finding a way to bring your sentiment into the scene and make it part of the scene is just magical, I guess. I love it. So we're going to leave our backgrounds, or actually we're going to clean up any of the ink in our stamp wheel first, but we're going to grab a Rolling Hills stencil. This is my favorite things stencil, but any kind of cloud stencil. I have some white pigment ink and a pouncing tool. If you haven't seen me do this before, I put the white pigment ink on my glass matte work surface because sometimes that you can see my inker, it will pick up that ink color, and it has picked up some of the ink color, and I don't want to take that right to my ink pad and transfer any of these aqua inks to my ink pad. So instead, I just press the ink onto my glass work surface and pick the ink up that way, and it works perfectly, and then I can just wipe it clean, and I haven't contaminated my ink pad. We're going to do this for both backgrounds. It's super subtle, especially once we get our sentiments and our images in place to build the scenes, but I do think it adds such a nice look to the background, and then when we layer the white die cut clouds on top, even better. Super, super cute. I always think adding some stenciled clouds is a good idea. Okay, so now look how pretty. Oh my goodness, I think that's going to be amazing. So I am taking my backgrounds and my stamp sets, and I am looking at them and seeing what all can I fit into my scene. This is a very good representation of what it looks like when I build a scene card. I like to take my stamps, lay them right onto the background. I generally am a background up builder for scene cards. And once I have that, then and see how much will fit, I will stamp, I will color, and then if I still need something, I can always go back and stamp extra images. I will tell you, I didn't stamp anything extra for either of these cards. I felt like what I had was enough, and I want to fill the rest of my space with my sentiments and then some of those other die cut cloud pieces. Same thing for the summer floaties. We're going to see what was going to fit. So I'm even tucking my stamp into the waves, and I'm choosing my critter characters based on that. So we have the flamingo, we have the bunny sipping his drink that he's going to sit in that flamingo floaty. And I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do on the second one. I was going to go with a more basic floaty, but I did end up using the unicorn. And one of the reasons why was I felt like with the whale card, we have some height with the whale down in front and then the whale in the back kind of coming up out of the water. Well, if I did a floaty that doesn't pop up as much, I just really felt like it didn't give enough height, didn't bring the scene up into the upper part of the card as much as I would like. So I did opt to do the 2 character floaties for this, the lamb, the bunny, and a beach ball. And I think that's going to be plenty for this card. There's quite a few more images in it, but I think that this is going to work perfectly for this design. I'm using an alcohol ink friendly ink to stamp my images, and you'll notice I am using the scraps of cardstock left over from the Seaside Vibes Creative Cuts frame. So I've really utilized that entire piece of cardstock. That was one sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. I got all of my images and my frames and even the die cut pieces I used to finish my cards from that one sheet. You gotta love that. Next, I am taking Olo markers and coloring in my images. I have sped this up. If you want to watch it a little bit slower, you can always, I would probably mute it so I don't sound funny, but you can slow that down here on YouTube in your settings, and you can watch as fast or as slow as you'd like. So you can also speed it up and you sound like a chipmunk, but that's kind of funny too. But that would be a way if you want to slow it down and watch the coloring a little slower. Now, I did do a lot of coloring. Whenever I'm doing a lot of coloring on a card, I do tend to speed up the video. Otherwise, it is a really long video to watch. The coloring probably took 40 to 45 minutes in real time. That is not any of the rest of the card, and that's just because it's quite a lot of coloring. I am using, as I mentioned, Olo markers. I will list them down below exactly what colors I am using for easy reference. The images for the summer floaties are obviously super bright and colorful. Lots of rainbow for the unicorn, the bright pink flamingo, and the bright rainbow beach ball. So I did end up using a lot of colors. I don't always use a ton of colors like this. And I kind of don't love having, my desk was covered with markers, but when the images call for it, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, I will say when we get to coloring the whales, I had this vision. I wanted to color the whales with darker tops, obviously, and lighter undersides. And so I went with cool grays for the underneath, but I wanted to do something kind of fun for the darker part of the whales. And you could go with grays, definitely, or you could do something completely, fun and colorful. But I opted to yes, use a dark gray, but I also used 2 shades of dark blue. And that dark gray just kind of highlights the outline area of the whales, which you'll see here in a minute. But the blues, oh my gosh, they look amazing. I think it might be my new favorite color combination for coloring whales. Lots and lots of colors here. I did do my bunny in some light tans. The unicorn and our little sheep are both a lot of whites. Yes, I used some light cool grays to color them to give them that shading, but I didn't want to have so many white, quote unquote, white images on my card. So I did opt to give my bunny some nice light neutral neutrals, and then a fun little drink that he's holding on to. The little sheet face is dark, as well as the hooves there. And then we're just going to go in with our light cool grays for the rest. I will go back to the bunny with my darker of the two neutral shades that I used, and I will go ahead and add some little dot images to make that super fun. Just give him a little bit of texture. And then we're going to switch to our whales. I'm going to do all my coloring and then I'll do all of my die cutting at once. That's something I kind of like to do. So here are those same cool grays that I just used, but we're using them for the undersides of the whales. I hope you guys love how these come to life as much as I did. I just really, really loved the color combination here. It really worked. So again, I'm working on the underside first, and then we will move on to the rest of the whale. And then the Little Mermaid is not going to take too much coloring. And then obviously the water coming up, we're going to do something super fun with that when we build the card. I'm going to go over the base of my whale. So I think it's fun to watch how it kind of comes to life with this lighter blue shade. Then we are going to take our dark cool gray color. I think I used cool gray 7, and we are going to kind of go around the outline of each whale background. And at this point you may think, oh, is that even going to work? I started with my blue and I thought, no, let's go ahead and do the cool gray first. So we're going to go in the cool gray. And I did try to avoid those little white spots, and I'm going to tell you guys, I ended up just coloring over them, and then I'll go back with a white jelly roll pen later and have that detail back in. Now I am pulling the darkest blue through, kind of coloring over that dark gray line and pulling that color out, blending, and then going back with my light color, and I did really saturate. I really saturated my whale. And at this point, I was in love. I was like, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. So I really loved how that turned out. We're going to copy that on the second whale image. I just kept trying to avoid those spots, and I thought, why are you doing that? When a white jelly roll pen will make your life so much easier. And then we're going to pull out the dark blue color again and go over the whole thing with our lighter or our lightish shade and blend out and kind of move that color around. And that looks amazing. Now, just like we did on the bunny on the first card, I will be going over this design with my dark blue marker and adding in those little spots. For the whale, I really think it adds to the detail of the design or of that image. We're going to use some kind of lighter blue shades for the water coming up from the blowhole, kind of as I'm imagining it. And then we're going to use some of our brighter colors, whatever was out on my desk, basically. For the mermaid, we gave her some purple or lavender hair. I did have to grab a couple of different shades of neutrals for the skin tones. I even pulled in a little magenta into her hair, and then for her tail, we're going to use some pretty aqua colors. Really quick and easy. We're going to grab our wire snips, cut apart our dies, and die cut all of the images for our 2 cards and put them together. So here's that white jelly roll pen. You can see adding the white spots back in. How easy was that? That was way easier than trying to color around all those little images. And then I thought it was kind of funny, so I left it in. That apparently I'm not a very good judge of what die matches up with what image. Wire snips are a must if you are dealing with tabbed dies. I highly recommend a pair of these because it just makes your life so much easier. Do be careful when you're cutting those tabs off. Either wear protective eyewear or, try to do it underneath a desk or somewhere where those little metal pieces won't fly up. So now I am cutting die cutting the rest of these. And what I love about the Floaties is that the die cuts a little slit into the Floaties, allowing you to tuck all kinds of critters. So not only the critters that you get in the Summer Floaties stamp set, but you may have critters already in your Mama Elephant stash that you want to use with this. I think that is phenomenal, and I really love that it's so easy to tuck them inside of the Floaties and build all kinds of amazing scenes. So let's start with our whale card, and I want to lay things out first before I commit to gluing too much down. I've got my glue press. We are going to start with whatever image goes in that wave that is at the bottom of the Seaside Vibes Creative Cuts frame. Then we're going to put glue all the way around the frame, line it up with our card base, and glue that down. Now, I didn't put glue underneath the waves because I still have things I need to tuck in there, and I'm not exactly sure where those are going to go. I want to place the Have a Beautiful Day somewhere at the top of the card, and I also want to add some stamped sentiments from another new product from this release, which you guys are going to love if you're like me. It's the typed thank yous. I love a fantastic sentiment stamp set, and especially a good thank you stamp set. This is going to work for so many occasions. I'm going to go back to my blueprint sketch ink, and I've got another pouncer tool here from Picket Fence Studios, and I am pouncing the ink on. What I love about the pouncers as opposed to a traditional blending brush is with something detailed like this delicate die cut sentiment, I can pounce the color on instead of moving the blending brush. They're made to pounce, and you're not going to get any funky lines, and you're not going to tear your delicate die cuts. I absolutely love these, and I've been using them a ton lately. Then I'm going to carefully poke out anything in my greeting. You'll notice I kept the ink darker down near the bottom, lighter up near the top. And I often love to incorporate the colors I have used elsewhere in my card making, or in my scene building. All card making, but scene building as well. Like I was talking at the beginning of the video, I want that to almost become a part of the card design. And in order to make it part of the card design, I think using similar colors, not having something that is blatantly, glaringly, darker or whatever, works really well in this instance. So now I am positioning the water coming up here, kind of back behind my greeting, and again, integrating that into the design. Now, I noticed that I accidentally shifted then the part of my greeting because it does die cut in two separate parts. I am able to fix it because it's a little bit funky at this point. I noticed a little bit later, but we'll fix that in a bit. I also noticed that my frame maybe didn't quite cover the top part of the card, so I just snipped off a bit of that without ruining the fact that it is a card that opens at the top. Next, I am taking sentiments from that typed thank you stamp set, and we're going to position those in the open spots in our background. So for the whale card, I am using Have I Told You Lately That You're Awesome. And then I'm going to stamp an ocean of thanks up above Have a Beautiful Day. It's going to read, An ocean of thanks, have a beautiful day, have I told you lately you're awesome. I really love having a grouping, I guess I want to say, of sentiments on a card design. I think it's a really fun look. So I'm playing around with that second greeting now, figuring out where I want that to go. And I think I have kind of settled up here at the top, and I like that a lot. We're actually going to put a sentiment at the top of both card designs. I am going to switch it up though. So I still have a little open space, but now that I have my greetings and I have my main images, I'm going to be able to easily go in and fill in those open spaces with my clouds. Where the clouds meet the frame, I am simply cutting and then gluing them down in place. And I want to fill in the sky with quite a few little cloud pieces here. So I have all the cloud pieces from the two die cut frames that I die cut, and we'll just mix and match. If the cloud fits where there's kind of a curve, I actually just use my scissors and cut a curve. I wasn't super specific. Just as long as it kind of worked, I was good with that. We're going to add our last little cloud up here, I think. And that looks adorable. I love it. Let's work on our second scene background. Same thing. We are going to work from that bottom wave up and fill in all of the open space. Now, everything really is the same for both of these cards. They just feature different images and different greetings. I am a huge fan of creating, several cards in one crafting session. Generally, it makes it a little easier if you're not trying to reinvent the entire thing. But if you get kind of bored and you want to create different scenes, this is a great way to do it. So basically, the backgrounds are the same basic sentiments, but we've mixed it up by using completely different stamp sets. And you may even have other Mama Elephant stamp sets in your stash. There are some older ones that you may have that will work great with this. I know there's been lots of other ocean or whatever, ocean critter stamp sets in the past that, or, even pool or whatever that you could use. So let's pop out our second greeting. We're going to ink it up just like the first, glue it down in place. And then for this one, I used 3 stamped phrases. Now I had to be a little bit more creative with the placement because where I placed my unicorn, and I'd already glued it down, although I like where he is, so that's okay. But it didn't give me quite as much room to fit anything longer. Now, another option would be to stamp something down along the bottom edge of the card on the wave if you wanted to, which I did briefly consider. You're even going to see that, I think, here in a minute. I thought about taking the greetings from the Summer Floaty stamp set, but ultimately I really just liked those typed thank yous, so that's what we're going to do for this one. But let's glue down "Have a Beautiful Day" first. And then we will add just the phrases "just wanted to say," "an ocean of thanks," and "for making my day." So what our card is going to read is "just wanted to say, have a beautiful day, an ocean of thanks for making my day." See how cute that sounds when you say it all together? I love kind of the juxtaposition of incorporating all of those different greetings together and how they look on a card design. And then we'll balance it by adding in the clouds and, of course, finishing with a few heart accents, because you guys know me, I always want to add some heart accents. You guys have been calling me out lately when I don't use them because you know that I almost always do. It does have to make sense to me, and sometimes a card doesn't need them, but for sure, for a cute little critter card, we can have some cute little red candy apple hearts. So I am really just kind of playing around with the greetings. And this is a very good representation of exactly how I design and work out a card design. Sometimes you have to move things around. Sometimes you have to see what looks the best. What can you envision? Because even with putting my sentiments down like this and looking at it, I was not loving how it just looks off to me. But what is going to balance it is adding in those clouds. So we're going to add a stamp sentiment up top, which will help balance a little bit. We have these 2 phrases that are going to be slightly offset over on the left side of the card. And then over on the right, we'll add in some clouds. Now we will add in some clouds to the left side as well as the top, but that's just kind of how I work out a balance problem in my head when I want to use something, and I do my best to use it. Sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. But that's kind of how I worked out what is going to balance this particular design. And again, stamping all of my phrases with Blueprint Sketch to match. Now let's add in those clouds and finish off our cards. We're going to just use some tweezers to kind of help pick these up and hold them down in place. It does help to keep the fingers out of the way a little bit too if you use some tweezers. And see how just adding even that one cloud really helps balance. And then when we add another one that slightly goes underneath the unicorn, all of a sudden it is super balanced. Now I do want to add another partial cloud along the left side and a little tiny bit up at the top as well. Grounding or having some of your clouds come in from the sides is another way to kind of help your scene card feel more balanced. I am using the rounded edge of this inside piece that was still on my desk to help me trim down the cloud that's going to go along the top of my card a little bit. I do have to cut it down a little bit more. It wasn't quite trimmed enough, but that gave me a nice place to start. There we go. That looks good. Okay, final touches. So in addition to the red hearts that I mentioned, we're going to add, oh, and I almost forgot my beach ball. We are also going to add some little white highlights, and we're going to take a black jelly roll pen and add detail to the eyes. That is, if eyes are open, on my whales, they don't really need that. And the mermaid's pretty small. Sometimes if you try to put the black spots on something that tiny, they end up looking kind of bug-eyed, which I've done before. So I opted to not do anything for the mermaid, but for my bunny, for my flamingo, for my unicorn, and my sheep, not my unicorn, the sheep, I decided to take a black jelly roll pen and add in the eye detail, which does really make them pop. We're also going to take that white pen and we're going to go in and add highlights to everything. It's kind of as much or as little as you want to do. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, but I really loved how it turned out on this card. And you can see the eyes immediately pop on those critters. I also used it for the nose, just to make the nose a little more prominent on our bunny. And then we're just going to add the little highlights kind of all over. I just have fun with it. And again, as much or as little as you like. But I do think it kind of kicks them all up a little, up a notch a bit. One area I noticed that I forgot in my cards, of course I don't notice it while I photograph the cards or anything. I think a highlight on the flamingo's nose would be very cute. So that is something I will do, after the fact, but it's not necessary per se, but I do like it. Let's add those little white highlights. I just think they pop on this dark navy blue of the whales. So good. And that is it. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 arch-shaped cards featuring Mama Elephant April 2024 release products. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new paper crafting video or I go live. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.